A thread by Carlos Osuita. I saw a video by Vaush V, whom I'd never heard of. He was raving about Dr. Karlin Borisenko, who did her own video about his video. The Vaush video was amazing for its sheer, raging, deranged mediocrity. He makes insanity boring. I watched only a few minutes of it because it was so labored. The guy is foaming at the mouth over rationality. And he's pretending the supporters of Donald Trump are utterly incomprehensible. You know what I thought while watching it? I'll bet he's got a history of sexually harassing women. Surprise! In March 2019, several direct messages were leaked in which Vaush, previously known as Irish Laddie, was acting creepily towards members of Destiny's Discord server, blah, blah, blah. Since the event, Vaush has released all the logs from the event, apologized extensively for his behavior, and has promised to do better in future. That's from Rational Wiki. The whole thing is fascinating to me because it illustrates the total collapse of standards among young leftists. And it took me into a world that I knew nothing about. I can't even understand how these people speak. MAGA Chud. Had to look it up. A Trump supporter, a member of Donald Trump's base. May be extended metonymically to the entire Republican Party and voter base. The term originates from two acronyms, MAGA, Make America Great Again, well-known political slogan of POTUS Donald Trump, and CHUD, Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dweller, sci-fi horror film from the 1980s named after the eponymous grotesque monsters depicted in the movie. This is also childish. Time for me to get all in my day. Not a single slang term originated by these bizarre social media kids will stand. Some of the slang they use is over 100 years old. Cooties. American military slang for lice, first used in World War I. Cool. It was already in use by 1884. Who's going to be saying MAGA chud next year? I could go on forever. What about sexual harassment? I started really getting into girls in 1976 when I was 14. Today's young dorks have absolutely no idea what they missed out on. Back then, children, the girls initiated the extremely major flirtation. We did stuff that today's Zoomers would find impossible to grasp. See, nobody was fragile. Almost nobody was hostile. And I think people were a lot more sane. When I was in 11th grade, I had a massive crush on a good Catholic girl named Mary. She was from Arkansas. Check. I just got told I couldn't send tweets. Refreshed, and it looks like I'm good again. Check again. Okay, back to Mary. She did everything languidly, smart, funny as hell, physically gorgeous. Everyone knew that Mary was saving herself for marriage. So that was the boundary. But back then, girls trusted boys to goddamn well contain themselves. So Mary was very flirty. We were all experimenting with limits, but in sane, respectful ways. That didn't mean we couldn't skate right up to the borders. Mary had a big old non-negotiable boundary, but she did things that today's women would find totally unacceptable. I'll speak bluntly. When Mary came up to a table of boys in the library or lunchroom to chat, she'd always stand behind some lucky bastard and put her hand on his shoulder. As she spoke, she'd massage your back, then stretch against you like a cat. Sometimes she'd lean down, her hand on one shoulder and her chin on the other. She wore snug Levi 501s. Sometimes she'd casually press the front of her jeans against your shoulder as she spoke. Nobody accused her of being a tease. We all tried to figure out where to sit so we had the greatest chance of being the guy she played with. It was fun, and yes, she knew exactly what she was doing and the effect it had on us. But we knew it too. So everybody was fine. We, in our own ways, were all adults. Now, these were mostly kids from the South whose fathers worked in the oil industry. I mean, as roustabouts. They were working class people. But there were also children of the American Armed Forces and Diplomatic Corps. There were some really messed up kids, but Mary avoided them. She chose boys who could handle it. In my 58 years of life on this earth, I've never had a problem with women. It's not hard to do. What I mean is women I wasn't dating. My people chooser is broken, so I kept choosing psychos until I decided that hermitude was the only answer. But in terms of verbally or sexually harassing women, nope. I treat men and women exactly alike. I even open doors for both. They always thank me. Everything about Vaush screams mental illness. Years ago, I noticed that there were only 10 leftist physical archetypes, and all leftists are slight variations. The first time I got really freaked out by uniforming was when Madonna hit it big. I was a sophomore in college and in Portland, not Maine, and suddenly there were a billion Madonnas everywhere. It was like the Madonna plague had hit. My first bass hero was Sting of the Police. He played a fretless bass, which I really admired. But I didn't try to look like him or sing like him. I also didn't buy a fretless bass. See, I liked what he did. I didn't want to be Sting. In fact, I thought he was a dick. He was already bitter, and he said really stupid, embarrassing things in interviews. And eventually, he ran out of creative gas. B-A-O, B-A-O, B-A-O. Stop singing that. Stuart Copeland is a far better musician. He played all the instruments in this song. Clark Kent, Grandiloquent. YouTube, link in the description. Whole thread right there. Such a brilliant bass tone. He always found unique bass tones. Tone is criminally overlooked by bassists. If you have great tone, it stands out, and you can play less. That's how Tony Levin has had a 50-plus year career. King Crimson Thila, Hunginjit, youtube.com. I don't actually live in the past. I live in the present and look forward to the future. But I can't imagine Vaush at 58. He'll be just as mediocre then as he is now. I can't even tell how old he is. Today's young people look really ravaged. And not one person who claims to be a socialist is a socialist. I've lived in 5 socialist countries: Venezuela, the Netherlands, Norway, the UK, and Japan. The governments did nothing right, and everybody was miserable. Oh, and God help you if you were injured or got sick. Norway was the worst country I ever lived in, worse than Venezuela, even factoring in the terrorism and lawlessness. In Norway, there was a sense of permanent dread. At any moment, the government would pass a new law that restricted your freedom. Norwegian children were the worst behaved I've ever seen. That's because it was illegal to discipline them. The neighbors' kids came in your house and trashed it while we were there. We tossed them out, and they ran home screaming. The parents came over and thanked us. They invited my mother to a party. There was a table with about 40 bottles of hard liquor. Norwegian tradition, the host said. The party isn't over until all the bottles are empty. They killed all the bottles and staggered home. Some puked in our yard. These were lawyers, doctors, university professors. The cure for socialism is to make everyone live under it. The happiest people I met in all 5 socialist countries were the people who just finalized their emigration to the US. Just wait. In November, we prove again just how great we are. The best is yet to come.